Well, welcome everybody. My phone says noon, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. Some folks will keep trickling in. Happy December. Thanks for joining this webinar on STL 2030 progress and the inclusive growth metrics tool in particular. As folks come in, feel free to just go ahead and put your organizational affiliation in the chat, as well as where you currently go to get data on the region, on the St. Louis region. And so go ahead and do some quick intros. So my name is Jeffrey King. I am Vice President of Strategy at Greater St. Louis, Inc., and served as overall project lead for STL 2030 Progress. Ruth?
Hi, I'm Ruth Sturjanian, and I'm the Director of Economic Research at GSL, and I manage the this metrics dashboard portion of the tool.
I'm Emily Desmond. I am a manager on the strategy team here at Greater St. Louis, Inc., and I served as the lead for the capital projects map.
Great, thanks, Ruth. Thanks, Emily. So here's how the session will go. I'll provide about 10 minutes of an overview on STL 2030 progress. Then Ruth will spend 30 to 35 minutes diving into some examples on the site itself and how to use the metrics tool. And then at the end, we'll have a time for Q&A. So feel free to, as we proceed, type in your questions into the Q&A field. Emily will process them, and then we'll have time for discussion at the end. One more, just a heads up that we are recording this webinar just for purposes of training and promotion. So a heads up on that. I do believe that if it's not already fixed, we had a note that the chat was disabled. So I think we're going to work on that kind of in parallel here. But I also do believe that you won't be able to speak and have us hear you. So please just put comments or questions in the Q&A field or chat as we go along. Okay, so let's get started with just a little bit of background and context. So around the same time of the establishment of Greater St. Louis, Inc. As an organization in January 2021, GSL led a process to develop a strategic agenda around inclusive economic growth for the 15-county bi-state metro area. This culminated in the publishing of the St. Louis 2030 Jobs Plan in May of 2021. The Jobs Plan really remains the business and civic community's roadmap for how we can all come together to drive St. Louis resurgence and position our region as a national leader on inclusive growth. I won't go into any more details on the Jobs Plan itself. I know that Emily will, if she hasn't already, put something in the chat, a link in the chat to the Jobs Plan. So it's worth pausing on how the Jobs Plan defined inclusive growth. Which is broad-based economic growth that enables all stakeholders in the St. Louis metropolitan area, including residents, workers, entrepreneurs, companies, and communities to realize their full potential. Such growth enables the widest range of people and places to both contribute to and benefit from economic success. So while a thoughtful definition, to be sure, the Jobs Plan intentionally didn't specify the metrics that we should look at to measure progress on inclusive growth or lay out quantitative targets for 2030 to achieve inclusive growth. And so that's a big part of the effort that we undertook this year, culminating in STL 2030 Progress was all about. So beginning of this year, GSL led a collaborative regional effort to take stock on how the region is implementing the Jobs Plan and how we're progressing towards the goal of inclusive growth. In September, we released STL 2030 Progress, or what we call a digital toolkit and website to do just that. It's important to note that this is really a first iteration. So we will continue to update and evolve the site as we proceed through the decade as a reference and orienting tool to understand really what is happening in St. Louis and how we're advancing our inclusive growth agenda. Really, dozens of public and private sector organizations contributed to the project, many of whom are on this call, I'm sure. So thanks to everybody. It was really a true collaborative regional effort. So at the outset, we undertook a scan of similar regional scorecard or dashboard efforts across the country. We spoke with some staff from similar organizations in Washington, D.C., Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Kansas City, and really decided to create these three complementary tools under the umbrella of SPL 2030 Progress. Together, the tools tell a fuller story of inclusive growth across the 15-county bi-state metro area. The growth metrics really tells the story of where our region has been and where we're going, taking an honest and hard look sometimes at the data, the quantitative data in particular. The capital projects map and the initiatives tracker, on the other hand, tell us the story about where we are headed as a region. So the actions and the investments that we are collectively taking across different organizations and communities to shape the St. Louis of tomorrow. In particular, we hope the map and the tracker contribute to raising awareness of all the great things that are going on in the region and spark further collaboration between organizations. The metrics page lays out quantitative targets for 2030 in the 4 North Star categories of population growth, GDP growth, median household income, and home ownership. These are designed to answer 2 questions. On the one hand, is our region growing? So looking at population and GDP growth, are we growing? And on the other hand, is our region growing inclusively? We developed targets for 2030 for these 4 metrics by comparing St. Louis performance over a past period, usually 2016 to 2021, compared to a set of 13 peer metros. It's important to note that the site lays out targets for 2030 at the regional aggregate level for all 4 metrics. We also have, for median household income and home ownership, targets that focus on reducing the disparities between our Black and white communities in the metro. Clearly a historic and structural major issue that our region has faced. However, it's difficult to really design program and policy interventions at this North Star level. So we're also tracking metro performance across the 4 focus areas listed below in blue. And this is where a lot of the real work happens to advance the metro. The overall theory of change is that the progress at the focus area level over time should also move the needle on those North Star metrics towards our 2030 targets. In total, we have about 70 interactive charts and graphs on the metrics portion of the site that go into different looks, different data cuts across the focus areas and the North Star metrics. Ruth will go into this in much more detail. And then quickly on the map and the tracker. On the map, the Regional Capital Projects map is an ArcGIS map that visualizes major physical developments and infrastructure investments across the region. The map shows economy enabling assets, such as major employers and institutions of higher education, as well as contextual data, providing insights into socioeconomic conditions of areas across the metro. The map is highly interactive with many different layers of data. In particular, we believe this map is groundbreaking for the data that it captures at a regional scale. We're not aware of another GIS map just like it in the US that takes in this types of data at a metropolitan scale. So we're very excited about the possibilities here. We'll go into this more at the webinar that we have next week on December 14th. And lastly, the initiatives tracker profiles around 125 different efforts across dozens of organizations to advance key jobs plan initiatives. The jobs plan, as you can see on the slide here, laid out 5 actionable strategies and about 20 major initiatives across these 5. They really vary from concrete things such as finish the Brickline Greenway to those that are more intangible, such as quadruple down on bioscience. Here in the initiatives tracker, you can use this to gain an awareness of the breadth and depth of activity underway across the metro to advance these initiatives. It should be said we encourage submissions for other efforts here. We're not capturing 100% of everything that's going on yet, of course, and we'll continue to update and expand this data moving forward. Again, we'll go into this as well more at the webinar next week on December 14th. So I will now pass the mic to my colleague Ruth, who will flip over to the site and show you a few things. Ruth?
Thank you, Jeff. Let me share my screen. Can you see that?
Yes.
Great. Great. Well, thanks. That was a great introduction, and you covered, I think, a lot of the points that that explain sort of the reasons for a dashboard, and also the challenges of a dashboard, because we clearly want to move some of these numbers, but they sometimes move slowly. So we came up, what I'm gonna do is kind of scroll through this introductory page and then show you some examples. And right up top here, I'm just gonna point out that there's a download overview, and I think that this is very valuable. It provides a lot of background, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more later on. But first, I want to show the more expanded view of the structure of this dashboard. As Jeff talked about, we have the North Star metrics, then we have the focus areas with the things that need to change to move those top level numbers. And I think our structure here is going to be very durable. I think it works very well. I think some of the underlying data within these focus areas and focus metrics could change over time as new data sources become available, as other series are discontinued. But I think overall this really does a good job of capturing what are the pieces that are needed to change to move the region forward. Jeff also mentioned that in our dashboard, we're comparing ourselves to peer markets. Here's a quick snapshot of the 13 markets we compare ourselves to. They are similar in size to the region. They're similar economic structures. They're within about 250 miles of St. Louis. And I think one of the most important features is these are markets where our business attraction efforts often come head to head with these other places. These are our primary competitors. And again, our structure is such that if we find we are suddenly competing with another market on a regular basis, we have the ability to add that data in as well. Now, the structure of the dashboard itself is we used a tool. We used Tableau as a tool, and we worked with McKinsey on the structure of this, and they were very helpful in guiding us to how to talk to the business community and how to keep our messages streamlined and clear. So the way each of these indicators is organized is the very first tab or the very first slide that you'll see within a section is the top line. It's if somebody's looking for that, what's going on, that's where you see it. Then you're able to scroll through these stories and drill down to different cuts of the data, whether we're looking at race and ethnicity, in this case, age group, geographically, drilling down, other special looks depending upon what the data is. That's how it's structured. And just a few more thoughts on dashboards. We're hoping that this is available for a couple of different uses. One is promoting the region. And some of these areas are nice surprises about how the region is doing well compared to our peers, and that's an easy sell. But you can also use this to promote the market if we've identified a weak area. You can also talk about what the region is doing to address that. And I think the most powerful part about this dashboard is actually the fact that it's a part of the set of three, so that you can find your data, tell the story you want to tell, but you can be more robust about it if you also look at the map and look at the tracker. So in just a few minutes, I'm going to do a couple of examples and show you how these three pieces work together. And I think, as I said, when I pointed out the summary, one thing that I want to stress, and I think, as participant in this webinar, you'd be interested in data in general. There's a constant tension about how much detail we want to include in a dashboard so that it's easy to understand, easy to digest, but there's also a whole variety of ways of presenting information that can be helpful. We landed on our best first pass at what we want to see, but I think it's also important to point out and point to other sources of data, metrics data in the St. Louis region and around the nation, and keep that information up to date for the user. So, for example, in the region, East-West Gateways, where we stand, is a wonderful resource. We want people that come to our site to know about how to use it, because it drills down into other pieces of information that are very important to understand the region, but are outside the purview of our work. There's other groups that focus on health metrics or children's issues, and we're trying to serve as a clearinghouse for that kind of information. And there are also a number of very robust national sources that present data for metros around the country. One of them is the National Equity Atlas. We use 2 pieces of data from that source, but as a user, you might be interested in going to it for other information. So those are kind of my overall thoughts. Just want to talk about 2 mechanics about this site, and then we'll jump into some examples. The first point is this does not work on cell phones, unfortunately. So you need to be on a laptop, or at least a tablet. And the second thing I wanted to point out is right here in this button. This allows you to jump directly to Tableau Public. All of the data that we use is public. This actual set of Tableau vizies are publicly available, and this is a way for you to get there if that is something that you need. The site is designed so that you don't have to go there, but we let you go there. So what I want to do now is walk through two examples of what data is here, what it shows, ways that you can interact with it to query and ask questions, and then how briefly the dashboard will interact with the other components of the website. So we're going to start out the highest level, population growth. The jobs 2030 jobs plan does a very good job of explaining that one of the region's challenges is lack of growth. This shows it quite dramatically. This is St. Louis. This is the US as a whole, and this is our peer average. This tool also allows you, if you are interested, and one of the questions I would ask is, well, if we're the slowest, who else is in our neighborhood of being slow, and who's the fastest? This tool allows you to select all the metros at once, and then you can click through to see, well, yeah, St. Louis is at the bottom right now, but actually earlier on, Pittsburgh was trailing. So Pittsburgh and St. Louis kind of swap back and forth in terms of slow growth communities, and then Detroit is a close third. So again, kind of older legacy cities is really part of our closest peers. And then who's growing the fastest? Raleigh-Durham, Nashville, and Charlotte. So as we look through and do queries, I would keep those in my mind to see how we compare on other measures with those communities. Now we talk about the importance of equitable growth. One of the most important parts of that is understanding our composition of our population. So I'm going to walk through an example, just pulling this up and looking at St. Louis. The thing that jumps out to me is the really dramatic difference in the share of our population that's Hispanic, 3.5%, versus nationally, which is over 18%. And then quite a few of our competitive markets all have a larger share of a larger representation of the Hispanic community. The only place that's got an even smaller share is Pittsburgh, which we remember is our almost partner in slow growth. And just knowing that starts to bring up questions in my mind. Because the Hispanic population is growing around the nation, and we're really not able to partake in that. We can look at our highest, what was it, Raleigh-Durham, 11%, Nashville, 8%, and Charlotte, again, close to 11% of their population includes Hispanic population. Then the next question is, well, can we see some more detail about what's going on with our composition of our population within the region? Because as Jeff really pointed out, and this is very important, the change happens, the metro level change happens in sub areas. It's different geographies, it's different communities, and that's the point where you intervene, where you plan projects. It's the metro level is not where you actually make your change. So let's look at the county the MSA at the county level. This is a whole lot of data in one visualization. We can see St. Charles is the fastest growing county in the region at this point in terms of numbers of individuals. And then hovering over, you can see the absolute change and the growth rates by race and ethnicity. This is a lot of data to process, and if you don't quite know what you're looking for, another way to access this and some of the other features of Tableau, if you're not a Tableau user, I'd like to stop and point out. You are able from our website to download an image. So the image that you see right here of the map with the scale is available. You can also download what they call crosstabs, which is the underlying data. So you click on crosstabs, you download an Excel file that will have all of the details that we were looking at before. You can also pull down a PDF or a PowerPoint, and you will be given the option to pull down the PDF or PowerPoint of just this particular slide or of the entire population story, all of the different slides that are available. And then finally, if you have Tableau yourself, you can pull down the whole workbook and work in it. If you see an image that's really helpful and you want to use it, in addition to being able to pull it down as an image and paste it into your report, you're also able to share it by you sending a link or even embedding the code. So that's a way to use the data. Now, going back to this question of change and understanding what's going on perhaps in your community, the county level, I think, is extremely valuable, but for a handful of measures, we can also connect directly with the GIS map. I'm going to switch over to there. This shows you the North Star metrics. We have the race and ethnicity of the population by zip code. This is all ACS data. And if you are interested in finding out about the Hispanic population in the region, you can look at it visually and say, oh, this looks, the color for Hispanic is red. This looks kind of purple. There's some red going on in here. Click on it, and it will tell you the zip code, the name of the community, and then the numbers of people in each zip code by race and ethnicity. So we can see, remember, the region is about 3.5% of the region. But if we click on zip code, it's this one I wanted to click on. Zip code now 66116, and we can see that there's a population of approaching 3,000 Hispanic residents. So if you're looking to develop a program where you want to do outreach, this would help you pick your target area. Another feature is, if you're not quite sure where you want to look and it's too difficult, it's not visually popping out at you, you also have the option to download. Click here and you can download this data set. That option isn't available for every single measure, every single layer, but for some of them it is. See, and you can export that, and you have the underlying spreadsheet that you can work with. Let's see. And now I'm going to take us back to the dashboard, and we're going to look at a couple of other measures that can help us understand and think about economic inclusion and opportunities for the Hispanic in general and for the Hispanic community specifically. So I'm going to take us to the focus area of human capital. You can see there's a description of educational attainment, one of the measures. We can look at this a couple of different ways, but the 2021 data can quickly see that educational attainment for the region's Hispanic population is bachelor's degree and higher of 30.5%, quite a bit higher than the nation as a whole, which is less than 20%, and higher than our peer average at not quite 24%. If we were interested in seeing how we compare to specific metros, can easily turn off all the others and then say, show me all of the metros. I think this is kind of interesting. You can see how well we stack up. Our Hispanic population is a well-educated in comparison to many of our metros. The only other places where there's an even higher share is Pittsburgh, which we remember is kind of our peer, and then a similar community, Baltimore, where there's also higher levels of educational attainment. And kind of what pairs with educational attainment is labor force. So we can look at unemployment rates by race and ethnicity and go through the same exercise. St. Louis's unemployment levels for the Hispanic community is quite a bit lower than the nation as a whole, and for our peer market average. And again, we can click and see how we stack up, how we compare. This kind of information can be used for, again, designing programs, designing projects, preparing grant applications, and that's how it's designed, so that you can look for what you're looking for, take a snapshot if it fits, and pop it in. I'm going to go back here. One other stop in this is going to median household income measures. And this is just a look at the St. Louis Metro as a whole, but this shows how the Hispanic community compare, how different racial and ethnic groups compare to each other, to the regional average, and to the national average. And also, this kind of information, I would say the two examples that I just gave you about educational attainment and household income are also other places where you can connect with the map, the GIS map, and look at those underlying layers. So that's sort of, this is the first example, and this, I think, using demographic data is common. We also wanted to include other kinds of information that might not necessarily be something that you think about. So we have an area called quality of community. because part of the effort to expand the region and attract people to it is we want to talk about what about being in St. Louis is desirable. How can you sell this to places? And this data set that we're presenting here is the Trust for Public Land that looks at open space, parks, and green space in major cities around the country. And it's clear that St. Louis, the city of St. Louis, stacks up really well against our peer markets. This shows that almost over 95% of the residents within the city live within a 10-minute walk of a park space. So talking about what it's like to live here, this is a good data point. But to make it really come alive, to make it a more persuasive argument, you can click over again to the GIS map. Right now, I've turned on layers that show our existing greenways, our planned projects as well, and all the parks in the region. So it gives you a good sense of the region and what resources are there. And then we have the option of zooming in on the city. So we've already identified that it's a place where lots of residents can get to parks, and further, the region is investing more in this strength. These dotted lines are the brick line, plans for expansion, and you can see if earlier we were looking at descriptions of the population in these parts of the community. You can see that we're reaching out to areas where there's diversity, and to make this story even more robust when you're talking about the region or explaining what's here, we also have the option of switching over to the tracker, which I'm going to click over to quickly, explore the projects. You can click on the brick line and get quite a bit of detail about the project, the funding, the partners. Click over to it. So the data on its own is persuasive to some folks, but the data, the geography, the map, and then the details about the action pull together a whole package that I think becomes even more persuasive. So those are the examples of ways to work with this data and the tools together. And I just want to share a couple more thoughts. I think to make this valuable, going and getting one piece of data is possible, but testing your ideas, digging in, thinking of a question and then looking to answer it, I think will make it a much more valuable tool to you. Connecting it to the tracker and the map to tell a story is I think unique compared to other communities, and I'd like to continue to build that. I'd like to ask you, our audience, as users, to think about yourself as part of a users group. I think the strength will come even more as regional participants make suggestions. If you are aware of a national indicator source that you use regularly and you don't see it in the summary, let us know so we can add it. If you have a data set that you use all the time and you don't see it here and you think it fits into our structure, into our framework, let us know. We've tried to build this in a way that information can be changed and updated. speaking about updating, just in the next couple of weeks, some data is going to be coming out from the ACS and BEA. All of that's going to be updated in a timely manner, and we're going to send out information so people will know when there's new data there to send you there. And I think that's a big value added for this particular tool. And if you have a powerful story that you're telling regularly and you think it fits in here, tell us, and then you'll have access to it, and we can make sure that it's updated on a regular basis. And I think the last point that I really want to make is think of the GSL research team as a resource to you. Feel free to email me or call me for assistance. If you're using similar pieces of information and would like some help with that, or you're trying to identify an indicator to measure something and you're not quite sure where to go, we landed on this set of metrics that you see here by going through a wide range of other pieces of information. So we may be aware of things that we didn't think at first belonged here, but we can certainly share with you. And if we talk about it and it seems like it's going to fit, we have a place to put it. So I think on that note, I am going to turn this over to Emily. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Ruth. That was super helpful. And really great to see the examples of how all three tools work together. At this point, we have a little over 10 minutes for questions. Thank you all for your questions in the chat. But if anybody has additional things that they want to see, questions about the process or the content, please feel free to put them in the chat.
Yeah, thanks everybody. One quick note. I know, Rachel, you had suggested the Chimura data set, and I just quickly went to the website. I believe, Ruth, that's related to Jobs EQ.
Yes, that's
Am I
Jobs
correct?
EQ. Yes,
Okay.
and we include it. And that's a really good point. There are proprietary data sources that that are expensive, that are hard for people to have access to, but we have licenses and we are allowed to share certain parts of that data. So be aware when you go through it and look that if you have another question that you would like answered by Jobs EQ, reach out to me and I can run reports for you.
Emily, was there a question about downloading GIS data? I'm assuming that's from the map.
Address that one. I'm not sure exactly what data you're looking for, but we are actively working on the ability to download the data right now. We're hoping to have that available by the map webinar next week. Right now, you can just download the data behind the North Star metrics, which is all census data. But specifically, we are hoping to provide access to the developments data layer so that you can perform your own analysis on that, or even make your own maps. So we just got a suggestion for local domestic violence data. I don't know if Jeff, maybe you want to speak to the public safety aspect of the score of the metrics.
Sure. So for the most part, the data that's represented within our metrics framework is really focused on different aspects of economic growth, inclusive economic growth. One of the focus areas, the fourth one, is public safety. And, based on a number of conversations and suggestions by stakeholders from the business and civic community over the last year, this is clearly an enabler, a key enabling factor for economic development, public safety. And so GSL had worked together with the Regional Business Council to release a white paper a number of months ago, 6 months ago, that was really calling for a regional strategy around public safety, but more specifically, homicide reduction, based on some research and analysis and a methodology that had proven effective elsewhere. So for that reason, we decided, with partners to focus on the homicide question, specifically on our metrics work here. And so it's not to say that moving forward we wouldn't add other things. We'll certainly take a look. It's just to say that's kind of why we landed more specifically on homicide, for this initial release. I do think it's kind of related to the next question. Can you speak to the process on the selection of data sources and how you will add additional data sources going forward? And if I may, Ruth, pass that one to you.
Sure. The process was, as I said, in some cases we had more options than we wanted to fit in. In other cases, there are some weakness that we want to build up. So going forward, I think we're going to be continually monitoring what's out there, seeing if other partners are doing. Some cases, I think it may be simply making sure that we're pointing to everybody locally and nationally that are looking at things that are very important, but not quite related to our process. And I think that's why this initial webinar is important. And I think we're going to be continuing into 2024, reaching out, talking to users, other researchers. And I think that we're going to be aiming to fine tune some of these additional data sets.
Jennifer, it's a really good comment about looking at, particular communities in our metro that are outpacing in a certain sense. And, as we were actually just talking internally here today about, we've spent so much effort in putting this out there that, we ourselves, I think, need to take a deeper dive across the three tools and looking at the stories that are there. And that's one thing I think that we'll be doing in the next few months and maybe there are ways that we can highlight, or draw insights from, what's going on in particular areas. So thanks for that.
I think that just one question for you all, especially after seeing kind of some examples of how to use both the metrics and all three tools together. Do you have ideas of how you might use the metrics or the 2030 Progress Toolkit overall? Like, what kinds of use cases might you have for this?
Yeah, and we'd love to hear that moving forward. I know that, we'll go more into the map next week, but as an example, we added some features on the map, based on a specific idea related to submission of proposals to HUD. There was kind of a near me location function that we added for grant funding. Yep. Is there a roadmap for the tool? And are you looking at annual updates or smaller incremental updates? Ruth, let me take that answer just briefly on the tracker and map, and I'll let you talk about the map. So for the tracker and the map, the update process is in some ways a little bit more complicated in that we'll do it. We intend to do it on probably, if we have the proper capacity, which we're planning for, on a quarterly basis to reach out to partners who already have some of their work highlighted or we've gathered data from that partner to make sure that what we have on there is just up to date. There are other examples on the map, such as the St. Louis Regional Freightway, and every year they come out with a list of priority infrastructure projects for funding, right? And that comes out at a particular time of the year. So that's an example of where, when the new edition came out, we would update our data sets in the map. So kind of a combination of an ongoing cadence, as well as, I guess, ad hoc updates based on when particular data sources are updated. Ruth, on the metrics, do you want to take that one?
Sure. The data will be updated as it's released. So later on this month, the GDP for county and metros is going to be released, and the 5-year ACS data is going to be coming out. So they're going to start out at the beginning of the year with all of the metrics that come from those sources will be updated. And then late in March, I know the population numbers that we use to rank metros is released. So as soon as that comes out, it will be updated. And it really depends on the source when that will happen.
And I should say both for the map and for the tracker, we encourage submissions at any time, and it's readily available to do that on the website. And we'll go into more detail on that next week. I believe the webinar is Thursday, December 14th from noon to 1. So if you haven't already, please join us for that. Thanks, Emily, for the link to that.
Okay, so it looks like we have a little bit over 5 minutes left. If any questions come up, feel free to send them in the chat. But we wanted to thank you all so much for joining today's webinar. As Jeff said, we hope to see you next week, where we'll do a deeper dive into the map and the tracker. As Ruth said, we are open to helping with your data needs and any questions. We have a great research team here. So if you have any questions about these tools or just any other regional data, regional economic data, we are happy to help with that. I sent our emails into the chat previously, but I'll do that again. And then we also have a general submission form on the 2030 Progress website, so feel free to utilize that. And yeah, I hope this was helpful. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.